Welcome to So Much Crime, So Little Time, Winter Shorts. I'm Dee.
And I'm Jeff, and for our winter series, we are recapping short true crime stories.
Here we're discussing Crime Story with Kathleen Goldhar. The episode is called He Posted Fake Images of Them on a Porn Site. Now these women are fighting back. It was released on November 3rd, 2025.
If you haven't listened yet, you can find a link for Crime Story in our show notes.
Okay, Jeff, where to start? I don't know how often I say that in a podcast that I should know where to start because I should have prepared where to start. But I will say where to start with this one. AI is so topical right now. Like, it is so everywhere, especially where we live.
Yeah.
And hearing, I know its capabilities in a positive, from a positive perspective. I know the efficiencies that it can add. I know the creativity. I know all of that. And I knew there was this dark side.
Yeah, there sure is.
But this interview as a woman, as a parent to, like, I have a son and a daughter. I don't think that's something I'll come back to because I feel like gender was brought up so much here. And I was like, do we need to talk about that? It feels very, whatever. We'll talk about that in a sec. But,
okay.
Jesus, this is terrifying, isn't it? Like, is there anything good that can come from this?
Yeah. So last week you brought us Giselle Pellicot, which was one of those stories that is just sort of the more you think about it, the more horrifying.
Is it me just bringing loads of like horrifying men attacking women stories? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've talked before about how terrible the internet is, how bad social media is, all that. But this is sort of a new, different angle of like, I mean, I learned the word nudify. That was not a word I had ever heard before. I mean, I was familiar with the things people could do with AI and images, and people do horrible things to each other on the internet using technology. And that seems like it's just gotten exponentially worse over the last few years. I don't know, your point about being a parent was that like your kids aren't that far off from being the age where they're going to be handed this, this technology, unless you don't hand it to them, but they're going to get it somehow.
Well, I think that was maybe as a parent, the shocking part. I know towards the end, it was like mentioned how like even there was like a certain child who didn't have a social media profile and these images surfaced, and it was because of the school that she went to had posted pictures of her in her prom. And so I think, and honestly, I think this actually comes back to something. Is it elevating people's like paranoia over this? But there has been instances where I have turned to my husband and said, why is this being filmed? Like we're at gymnastics. And all of the kids are out there, and I'm like, but there's someone filming something, and I feel weird about this because the person filming, and it happens in parks, it happens all the time. I'm not saying that I'm innocent of this, but it could be a parent or whatever, but like you're filming other kids too. Then you're putting it on social media with this naive idea that it's just yours and for your followers or whatever. And I don't know. It brings up
like how escapable is this really? I mean, I feel like so they gave that example of the young woman who didn't have social media. Yeah, and there was photos that her school basically published her prom pictures, and that's what got used on this site. I don't know. Like I think the same thing because sometimes I'm out in public and someone is at a restaurant or something, and like I'm in the photos or I'm in the videos just because I'm next to them or near them. And I think like I don't want to be on your Instagram. Like I don't like.
I mean, it's like the guy in the Coldplay, the couple in the Coldplay concert recently who got caught having an affair. It's kind of similar. Like I'm not excusing it, but I'm just saying like they were at a public venue. They knew there was cameras there. Yeah, but we've just allowed this to be excused. Yeah, but we've just allowed this to be excused. And I think maybe that's what this podcast did for me. And I think it did a really good job, to be honest. I really enjoyed hearing that interview the whole way through. But it told a story and it felt very backed with reality. But it brought up some uncomfortable feelings in myself in how I view this. Because I think it's easy for us all to back. Obviously, you don't take a photo of a person in your class who's underage, or a person you work with, or a teacher, or whatever, and put them through this app and do all these terrible things. Obviously, I don't think anyone's going to stand up and argue this publicly. Okay.
Sure.
We all know that. However, what we do constantly is we create memes and we create GIFs and we create images. Like recently, JD Vance went to Scotland, and a big photo of his like baby face thing was put on a building.
Yep. I remember that.
But like, my point is more like, we do this for political figures. We are normalizing this for our children. We are normalizing this for society. We are saying this is what we should do. We should ridicule people. We should whatever. And there's a line. There's a line between, like, you know, back in the day in World War I, World War II times, when we're looking at satirical, like the comics. So if you have like a political comic, that's taking it to a point, and maybe at the time it was outrageous. I remember actually studying that when I was studying history for the even search, like, you know, at the time there's like people are disgusted at this newspaper and this publication for printing this, and now we're so loose with what we say about people. We're so loose with what we say about people in power. Like people we previously probably looked up to, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like the internet has fucked our heads up, and I feel like AI is actually making it worse.
Wow. All right. I'm glad that's you and not me saying that. Because I'm going to kind of come
Do I sound like an old white man? Is that what you're saying with that comment?
Well, a little bit, yeah. Because I guess I was actually thinking sort of something, not the opposite, but a little bit different. Is that I feel like we have, as participants and people in just modern day society, I feel like, okay, this podcast was about these young women whose images were stolen. Like these particular women from Levittown, they had images that they put on like Snapchat, and Snapchat was designed to be a fleeting image, non-permanent image. And so like they talked to this one girl, Kayla, who had like an image of her in a bikini, and it was run through this Nudify app and posted on this website. And then people were taking these images and doing like rape fantasies and like things with like all kinds of like horrific like violence and like basically using AI to sort of harass and abuse and do horrible things with images of these women, these young women. And a part of me was thinking, well, okay, we are all, and I'm not, in no way am I blaming the women for taking these pictures of themselves in the first place.
But
I'm not,
are you going to butt that?
I am going to butt that, because I feel like this is sort of the society we live in now, where I feel like this can go two different ways. 10 years from now, 30, 50 years from now, I think we're either going to be at a place where there have been some sort of standards and laws and regulations and control over this, or the more likely outcome, I think, is this kind of stuff is so rampant, we're numb to it. And it's ever present, where images of like, where high school boys take images of their girl classmates and do horrific things with them. And it's just ever present, because I feel like that's the sort of legacy of the internet. Like where we are now versus where we were 20 years ago. And it's, you know, it's a parabolic curve of just increasing and or deteriorating.
Parabolic curve.
It's getting worse more quickly. It's changing faster as time goes on.
Thank you for dumbing it down for me. I say that in a voice when I'm like,
I can see you
do you know what comes up?
Googling.
Okay, go on. Moving on.
The point I was trying to make was, I guess, if you were to go back in time, 25 years, I think the things that people were doing then with like kind of pre-iPhone, like early to pre days of digital photography, people were still like trying to do things, horrific things, and just the means were so much less then. You just couldn't do very much. And of course we're going to like be reduced to our like most basic like base instincts. And if you're, a 17-year-old boy, you're going to find a way to exploit this for something filthy and gross and vile like this, because that's how the brain works. So I just like I don't see I guess my prediction is we're
I want
going
to
to
push
become
back on
numb to
that.
this. Okay.
We
Okay.
we are becoming numb to this, but I want to push back on what you're saying there, because I felt that this was one of the things that I didn't love about this interview. I Putting it out there, I really enjoyed this interview. I thought it was fantastic. It makes me want to listen to Levittown, not for the content because it's very upsetting, but
Mm.
I did feel like the experts interviewed here, they were the type of journalists who seem to care so much and seem to be diving so hard into this. However, what I would like to listen to it more for is to see, are we really splitting our genders here going into this? Because it felt so much throughout this. Young boys are going to feel this way and young women are going to be whatever. And I'm like, wait a second. It felt like and they kind of alluded to this a bit when the incel remark was made. And it was like, oh, well, I wasn't going to say that. I was trying to avoid it. It felt a little bit like the precursor to our neo-Nazi podcast, which was called
White Hot Hate.
It felt like a precursor to some of the people we heard from White Hot Hate, where it was like, oh, well, it started off like hating women and then like, I'm building it up, whatever. And what annoyed me was it felt like it was like, oh, well, boys. I'm like, no, not boys and not girls. Like we've heard about these stories where the boys are the victim of this. It is more likely or more often that we're hearing a story where it is the women that are a victim of this. I am aware of that. But it felt to me like there was a slightly narrowed view of the victims that are involved. Of course, the victims are the victims of these deepfakes, but there's this larger societal issue that isn't about that is actually about like, what are we doing to our children? What are we doing to society with these tools? But what are we doing to educate people that, of course, there is power in these tools, and then also there's negativity in these tools, and there is like an ability to weaponize them. But there's this other component where it is we have these massive companies that can put in place the ability to curtail these images, and they just won't do it. These websites would not exist if it wasn't for money.
And
we heard this as they were asked to take the pictures down. To pay $99?
Yeah.
Sorry.
When I first heard years and years ago of Snapchat, I remember this moment because my initial reaction was, oh, there's no way that works. Like, there's no way that like that's going to be used. There's going to be people who send pictures that they think, oh, this picture will disappear. And of course, people are going to take screenshots of those pictures. Of course, they're going to find a way to work around those constraints. And of course, it's going to be first and foremost, maybe teenagers, young people who don't have a sense of like what it means to send their image, maybe an inappropriate image or an image that they're not going to be okay with having out there because they're not thinking with a fully developed brain. And here we are, right? Like if Snapchat didn't exist, maybe this wouldn't have happened quite this way. It would have happened because you're right. It's not one company. It's a lot of companies. And those companies are run by people, and those people don't always have the best.
Oh, they want money. Yeah.
But also like you can work at a company where people have very good intentions and the company has a good noble mission, and still sometimes you just do things that screw things up for people and cause harm inadvertently. And I don't feel that way about Facebook or Twitter. Like I think those companies are sort of corrupt from the start. Like Facebook was corrupt from the start. Facebook was evil from its inception and has just gotten worse and worse and worse. How do you defend Facebook? I don't think it's defensible. But then there's 100 other companies doing similar things. Like, I mean, I don't. That's this my point about we're just going to sort of race to the bottom because these forces are all like AI is just accelerating this more. Like smartphones accelerated this. Like there's been these sort of huge moments of you could say leaping forward or just like getting dramatically worse. And I don't know. That sounds so fatalistic and just like pessimistic. But like, did this
I don't know if
surprise you? Did
anyone
you
will
listen to this?
leave. I don't know if anyone will leave this podcast being anything other than pessimistic, though.
But at the same time, did anything you heard here, were you in disbelief or actual like shock?
Yeah, was I in disbelief over it? No, but did I hate hearing it?
That's
yeah.
not what I asked. That's not what I asked.
Was I in disbelief over it? No, I think there were certain elements that were more surprising to me. The point of like, say, the point of the person who was like, their high school prom pictures is what was used. They weren't actually on social media. I was like, Jesus Christ. That was not surprising.
Is that surprising? It's not surprising.
It's not surprising. I think more so what I'm taking from this podcast is it really makes me take pause and think, okay, what do I have? And honestly, whatever about me, because that's my choice. But with like my kids, like I'm like, oh my God, my profile's private. Like, how private is a profile? I don't really know.
Not
like,
very.
haven't really dug into that enough, And so that's something I want to be more cognizant of.
But
And then also the other thing that I think that it was, I think the thing that I found maybe most disturbing, and I didn't quite understand. I didn't know whether I missed it. Maybe you caught on to what I missed. Their phone numbers and addresses were released and their social media accounts. What's going on there?
what do you mean? What's going on there?
What?
They're being doxxed, basically.
Okay, so there's a porn site with their photos and being like, oh, look at me, I do all these things and these are all of my details if you want to contact me.
No,
Did I miss that part?
I don't think it was totally clear. What I took from that was this isn't just like a regular porn site. This is almost more of a revenge fantasy site.
Mm.
And so a part of that is not just the naked images, but that's where the violence comes in. And that's also where let me provide all of their contact information so that you too can harass them and make their lives hell.
I mean, yeah.
But that was my point about nothing surprising me here is because I feel...
Was that not something that was surprising to you? That people would do that?
A boy who thinks, in this example...
He's like, what, 16? Is he a boy at 16?
Man, no, whatever. A young man who was described as very intelligent, but also very, condescending, had... So he had, I mean, the incel comment, I think, was kind of odd how it was used here. But I mean, if we extrapolate
I was surprised it wasn't edited out, to be honest. Or was it the point that, like, she wanted to make it sure that she was asking the comment of, like, oh, well, this seems like... It's like, well, I'm trying to avoid that. I'm like, why are you trying to avoid that? Is that because it's become popularized and they're trying to, like, disconnect the two? This isn't something to be proud of kind of thing?
I don't know. My interpretation, and I could be wrong about this, is that term now has just taken on a different sort of political connotation. And so that's why Kathleen Goldhar was the one who said it, but the hosts of Levittown were sort of shying away from it. I think they were trying to, and this gets to your point about the gender thing and the this is boys and girls thing, is I'm curious if, this, we're doing right now a podcast about a podcast about a podcast. And so Crime Story is a 1-episode story about a multi-episodes podcast called Levittown. And I'm curious if we listen to Levittown, if we'd get into more kind of nuance and more kind of the gray area and more, just
Oh,
more than there was
presumably.
time for here. Well, sure, it's just
Would you
longer.
want to? Would you want to? Listening to the hosts, obviously, look, the subject matter, you don't want to go on the journey for the subject matter. But from a host perspective, do you feel like they would do a good job at like telling that story?
I think so. From what we heard of them as Olivia and Margie,
Mm-hmm.
Margie, I think it's a hard G. Yeah, I mean, some of it is just I like their accents, but yeah.
There's an Australian in there.
They New Zealand or Australian?
Oh, don't
I
know.
don't know.
That's
One of the
like
two,
English
for
and
sure.
Irish. I can't get that wrong.
I would. I think I would. I think they struck me as people who did their homework and were really trying to present a solid story. Like they came across, I thought, very well in this.
Mm.
I agree with you that the content would be hard to listen to a lot of this, just because it seems pretty horrific. But yeah, I would listen to it.
Yeah.
Can I ask you? I had a different question that we haven't touched on yet. So one thing that they talked about quite a bit was how this wasn't really illegal.
Mm.
And again, that didn't surprise me because I understand that the laws just don't sort of keep up to date with the technology. They just can't. Like there's just like, especially when we're mostly governed by like people in their 80s, like they're just not going to stay on top of AI. But I guess, okay, so we heard about Kayla first. She was the main young woman who was profiled. And when this first sort of blew up, she was 20 at that point. She was just out of high school. And so not a minor, but aren't there sort of like child pornography laws? Like, isn't that a thing that could have come into play here? Or maybe they were above the age of that?
I'm not sure about like whether they were above the age. It feels a little bit like, the whole if you break up with someone and you have videos or photos of them,
Oh, like
and then you
revenge porn?
publish them. Revenge porn, thank you. So I feel like it's a little bit like the revenge porn situation where it's like, of course it didn't exist before because it was never a thing. And then it had to be like, no, we can't allow this to happen. So for so long, it was just allowed to happen. So it feels a little bit like that to me. So apparently it wasn't, I don't know, there was no legal thing against
I
it.
do remember the law that was passed that was referenced here, where it was a very like bipartisan law to make some of this illegal. I mean, I remember when that was passed because that was in the news, and it did seem like even a modest step forward. But it's one of those things where it's just like the law is going to keep lagging behind the technology. And
I mean, not even behind the technology, but we heard in the Giselle Pellicot situation with the upskirting. Like upskirting wasn't a thing for so long. It's like, why?
Well, and the rape laws in France too.
And the rape laws with the consent. And there's so many things that only come into law when people are like, this is such a mess. Like, we can't do this. And then all of a sudden people are like, you're right, this should be a law. And someone has to push it forward. Like,
yeah.
It feels ridiculous that we would have to say, oh, but also if someone, of course it's illegal if someone takes my clothes off and takes a photo. But if someone takes a photo and then does, like, if they do it in the other order, we have to like clarify that that's like an issue. Like, and none of this is with consent. Like, how is, I think for maybe lay people, we are like, well, of course, it's kind of like when you're explaining something to someone and you forget to explain that bit of context that you already have. It's like when you use a word to me, Jeff, and I'm like, Jeff, I didn't have time to do 5 degrees. I haven't got, 17 masters in all of the different words and the vocabulary of English. But so sometimes we need to pause the podcast. I have to Google parabolic curve to be like, okay, I know what you're talking about. Hold please, like, and figure it out. Like, we need to keep up with each other. And sometimes people miss the context and they speak in a way that isn't right. And the law speaks at a level that isn't with the technology. And especially in the next 10, 20, it's only going to get worse.
And
Do you
faster.
know what you need to do? We need to get AI to create the laws as
That
soon
can't
as
go wrong.
AI makes new stuff that it can do to annoy the laws and make the laws weaker. Someone needs a
Hey,
custom GPT for that. Or a Gemini
me a-
Gem,
Let
which is
me
apparently a thing.
let me stop you. Let me ask you a question. So last week we talked about with the Giselle Pellico case, how much of sort of a empowering story that was in the end, and how much of an icon and hero she has become. They described this story as empowering, and I get why. These women kind of found each other and did the police work when the police were kind of like, this isn't illegal, and they figured out who this guy was. There was that great side story about the cop showing up at the door and having printed out what the guy wrote and then reading it in front of his mom, and I thought that was fantastic. But I wanted to ask you, so, and it's hard to, you can't really compare this to the Giselle Pellico story, but this story on its own, how do you feel about this as sort of an empowerment story?
You know what? I think any story where people feel like they have a right to disagree that it's not illegal, and they're saying this is fucking illegal, and they do the work and then they get that pushed through, I think that's amazing. I honestly do. I think it takes so much like physical and emotional energy and time to put this all together, and they did that, and then they get somewhere that impacts so many other people, and people don't see it, but that's what happens. They really do impact so many other people, and I think it's only in doing that we start to feel heard. And I think until like there's like a dynamic nature to the laws, the way there is to like content on websites right now, it's the only way we're going to start seeing like the laws kind of keep up with like what we can do online. It's incredibly frustrating to me that it's in the hands of the victims. Like, the victims have to do this, because even in this story, like when they go and the police say like, look, there's nothing we can do, it's not illegal, is no one thinking it's not illegal yet? Like, where the fuck is your growth mindset? I understand that everyone's stretched or whatever, but where is your growth mindset here? Why is it on the victims to go out and grab that and say, this is the evidence? Is it that they're pummeled with so many of these cases? Or just they're like completely stretched? I don't know. And again, maybe that's something I'd garner from the entire podcast, or listening to the entire podcast.
Well, and also, like, here we heard about these 40 women who went to the same high school who were targeted seemingly by the same man. But then we heard about this website that he was using that had, what, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. We don't know how many women or people of other genders, I don't know, were on there. We just really heard about the women. But what about the ones who didn't go to high school with 39 other people just like them and targeted by the same
Well, we heard
person?
about it worldwide then towards the end.
Right.
Like, we heard about
but
how it's
what's
going
their
worldwide.
do they each have to sort of find the perpetrator in their individual case in order to get any type of justice? Because that's
and they have to fight for it within their like jurisdiction if it's not within America.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. It feels like it's a government. It's a societal issue to have to like, if we are going to push these tools forward into the hands of society, we need to have some sort of responsibility in that. And I think the biggest providers of these tools need to take ownership and put the money in there to make sure that this shit isn't happening.
Do you want to go to Mark Zuckerberg's house and ask him politely?
I don't think he's going to be the one to do it. I think it's the AI folks that'll do it.
Do you want to go to Sam Altman's house?
Yeah. Would you like to listen to the full podcast?
Yeah, I think I would. Would you?
Okay. Do you have any reason, or are you just like, yeah, vibes are good, man, let's go with the vibes?
I said already, I thought the hosts seemed like good journalists. I thought they felt like they did their homework.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're really good. Other question for me is, would you be interested in listening to another crime story podcast where we're really like interviewing? In this case, it was weird because we were interviewing podcast hosts of a longer podcast about this. So we're in a weird situation. I get that. I picked it because it was weird. But other episodes, they're not necessarily podcast hosts. So I'm just wondering, would you be interested? Because we've covered some stories by this host before, Kathleen Goldhar, and we've had mixed opinions of her and her presentation of stories. So I'm just wondering how you'd feel about listening to another one.
Yeah, I would actually. I looked at. I didn't listen to any others, but I looked at the descriptions of a bunch of others just because I was curious how if this is a typical thing that this crime story is, and it does seem like she does kind of a mix of different things. Sometimes she is interviewing hosts of other podcasts. Sometimes she actually has a couple episodes on other stories that we've covered. I think Sea of Lies, maybe other CBC podcasts.
Interesting.
And sometimes she's interviewing. Sometimes they're interviews. Sometimes they don't seem to be interviews. But yeah, I mean, I thought she was a good host here. I thought she asked interesting questions. I thought it was, I mean, of the like one episode podcast that we've listened to and discussed, this was kind of different. It was, I mean, it didn't feel like, I don't know, it just had kind of a different structure and style to it that, yeah, I thought it was well done. What did you think?
I really liked her. I thought she asked some really good questions as well, and I don't know. I thought she probed where it needed to be probed, and it felt like the story progressed. I could hear the story, but I could also hear the like opinions and the thoughts throughout. And I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It kind of felt like what we do, but different.
Yeah, maybe that's why I liked it, because it felt familiar.
Yeah, maybe. But there was no
Yeah.
time machine.
She needs a time machine. Yeah.
You need a time
Some totem
machine.
pole trivia. Or
But I agree. If you have listened to Crime Story and you want to recommend any other episodes that we should listen to, please reach out and let us know. We would love to hear it.
Dee, it's the middle of December,
Mhm.
and we're in really the thick of the holiday season. And I know people are really busy. Speaking for myself, there are so many years where I really I'd get a holiday card in the mail, and I would think, oh man, yeah, I meant to do that. I was gonna get the cards. I was gonna find a photo. I was gonna like get a family photo, and I was gonna send it out to all my friends and family. And you know, there's a couple of times I've done that, but I would say it's maybe 2 out of the last like 10 years where I actually figured it out and got it together in time. And so I have a proposal for people out there. If you're listening right now and you're thinking, oh yeah, I meant to do that too, and I haven't gotten around to it. Instead of going to all that trouble, ordering those cards, getting everyone's address, all that stuff, go to patreon.com/SoMuchCrime so little time. Either sign up, join one of our plans, or if you already have one, upgrade. And then we'll send a card out, a handwritten card. And if you want, tell us, and we can send it to your parents, your siblings, your kids, your friends, on your behalf. One per membership. So if you want to get more, then you got to sign up for multiple Patreon accounts. That's fine. You can do that. They're pretty cheap. And on top of that, for you, aside from the satisfaction of having known you got your cards out, you get to listen to extra Time Machine clips. You get the opportunity to get a hat or a t-shirt from the show. You could also give that away, but you're not going to want to because you're going to love it so much. You can see pictures of those on our Patreon. Bunch of other stuff. Go to patreon.com/SoMuchCrime so little time and check it out.
And also, you just get to hear me giving out to Jeff more, which apparently is one of the highlights. Who knows? Who knows why? Okay, so we're back on Thursday with another trip in the time machine.
We'll introduce a crime and get ready to listen to the story before coming back with a recap just like this one to discuss.
That's on the next So Much Crime.
So Little Time. So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of Mind Glove Media. The executive producer is Paxton Caloriso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Our theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show on your podcast app. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.